Have you ever seen an error code on your Ford that just looks weird? Like a jumble of letters and numbers? Well, today we're tackling one of the most common ones, U3004. We're going to figure out exactly what your car is trying to tell you, and more importantly, what to do next. Let's get right to it.
Okay, so there it is on the screen. Maybe you plugged in your own scanner, maybe your mechanic did, and U3004 pops up. That feeling of, uh-oh, what does that mean, is pretty normal. But don't worry, you are in exactly the right place. We're about to translate this thing and lay out your game plan.
All right, first things first. Let's demystify this code. It might look like gibberish, but it's not random at all. It's actually a very specific, very intentional message from your vehicle's onboard computer.
So, what is it really? Think of it less like a random warning light and more like a sophisticated diagnostic tool. Ford actually put the system in place to help technicians zero in on failures happening deep inside a specific control module. It's designed to make repairs less of a guessing game.
Okay, so we know it's a diagnostic tool, but what is it actually saying? Let's go ahead and translate this from car speak into plain, simple English.
And here it is, the official translation. System internal failure. Right away, that tells you something important. This isn't a simple fix like a bad sensor or a blown fuse. The problem is pointing to an issue deep inside one of your car's electronic brains.
You know, the best way to think about this is like going to the doctor. Instead of just saying, I don't feel well, you're pointing to exactly where it hurts. This code is that specific symptom. It helps your mechanic, the car doctor, skip the guesswork and start looking in the right place, which saves a ton of time and money. All right, so if U3004 is a symptom, what's the actual disease? Well, our investigation shows that it almost always comes down to one of four main culprits. Let's pull off the masks and see who they are. So here they are, our four usual suspects, and they range from the pretty simple to the more complex. We've got low voltage, a faulty wiring harness, incorrect programming, and a flat-out damaged control module. Let's dig into each one, starting with the easiest one to check.
Suspect number one is often the simplest culprit, low voltage. You'd be amazed at how many confusing electrical issues in modern cars just come down to a power supply problem.
Here's the thing, those control modules are sensitive. If they're not getting enough juice, or if the voltage isn't stable, they can get confused and throw an internal failure code. So the very first step is always to check the battery and the charging system to make sure everything's putting out the power it's supposed to. Okay, what if the power source is fine? Well, the next place we look is at the pathways that carry that power and data, which brings us to culprit number two, the wiring harness.
Just think of the wiring harness as your car's nervous system. If there's a bad connection, a corroded pin, or a wire that's frayed and broken somewhere, the signals just can't get through correctly. That communication breakdown is enough to trigger this code. And in this case, the solution is pretty straightforward. Replace the damaged wiring.
So we've looked at the power and the pathways. Now let's switch gears from hardware to software. Culprit number three is all about a glitch in the programming.
You know how your computer can act up after a software update? The same thing can happen to your car. A system update might have gone wrong, or the programming could just have a bug. This isn't a physical part you can replace, it's a software problem that needs a professional to go in and reprogram the system correctly.
And that brings us to our fourth and final suspect. This is the big one. The control module itself is physically damaged and has failed. Remember how we called the module the brain of the system? Well, if that brain has an internal short or some other damage, it's just not going to work, period. At that point, the only solution is to replace the whole unit, and that's definitely a job for a qualified technician with the right tools to program the new one.
Okay, so we've met our four culprits. Now for the million-dollar question. What can you do, and when is it time to pick up the phone and call a pro? Let's break it down really simply. Of these four possibilities, checking for low voltage is something you might be able to handle yourself, or at least have an auto parts store check for free. But for the other three, messing with the wiring harness, reprogramming software, or replacing a whole control module, you're going to want to call a professional. Trust me, those jobs require some specialized know-how. All right, let's step back for a second and pull this all together. What's the big takeaway for you as a car owner when you see this code? You know, this quote from our source material really just says it all perfectly. This code isn't there to make your life harder, it's there to make the fix faster and more accurate. It's a helping hand, pointing everyone in the right direction.
And that, right there, is the most important thing to remember. U3000 is not the final diagnosis. It's the starting line. It's a powerful clue that turns a wild goose chase into a targeted, effective investigation that saves you time, money, and a whole lot of headaches.
So instead of being in the dark, you now know this code is a clue. You can have a smarter conversation with your mechanic. You can say, hey, I know this code could be a few things. Can we start by checking the battery and charging system? You're empowered. So the real question is, now that you're armed with this knowledge, are you ready for that conversation?